Hello, welcome back to Los Comics TV. I'm your host, Javier Hernandez. So today we're gonna go big, go large. These are Treasury Comics, at least the generic name for this size of comic. DC and Marvel put them out, but Marvel Treasury Edition. So you can't tell maybe the size of it right now. So here's a regular standard comic from the era, issue number 14 of Howard the Duck. Yeah, I just happen to have that on at the side here. Anyway, so check this out. So this comic, the standard comic size is 6 3/4 by 10 inches. So the Treasury Comics are 10 by 13 inches, 13 tall, 10 wide. So considerably bigger. I guess that's almost, yeah, that's double right there. So let's put this aside for now. So these comics were available just like the other comics at 7-Elevens or supermarkets back in the day. This is a very well-read issue. Look at this. You know, it's got ripped up. It's just well-read. Just over, you're talking, what, 76? We're looking at almost 45 years since I bought it. That's quite a bit of time, but I actually have another copy of this, which some of my comics, especially these Treasuries, I would rebuy, 10, 20 years later, like a nicer copy if I can find it really cheap. I mean, I'm not one to go and try to go buy a Treasury comic if it's 30, 40, 50 bucks. But sometimes I go to conventions. In fact, a few years ago, just maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I went to a local convention and some guy had a stack of Treasury comics. I think he had them for $1 or $2. Maybe $3 tops, but they were in pretty good shape. So anyway, but these Treasury comics, for the most part, they were reprints. So in this case, Marvel decided to take a collection of their, superhero, they call them team-ups, but it's actually when the superheroes are fighting one another. That's always fun. So, and then you get the comic reprinted at, this giant size. So here's one with the Thing versus Submariner. This is one I really liked. Again, reading it over and over again was, they didn't print the covers on the comics. I think the covers are on the back. Yeah. These are the covers of the actual comics. So here's Daredevil comic issue 43. Daredevil versus Captain America with a great Jack Kirby cover. Interior done by another of my favorite artists, one of the great comic artists of all time, Gene Colan. Look, these two big panels here and this splash, they read great on this full size, right? Look at that. So I'm not going to really describe all the stories. I mean, basically they end up fighting. It's really preposterous. I got to tell you this one because it's so preposterous even for a comic. Like Daredevil is mopey because of his girlfriend, Karen. And he fights. He hears about some burglar. Some burglar just stole some stuff from a medical supply, whatever, and I guess it has some radioactive elements in it. So he knocks the guy out easily, but then he's getting affected by the radiation. He's having flashbacks to when he got his superpowers with the radioactive isotope hitting his eyes. Anyway, he's all dizzy and confused and dazed, and he finds out there's something going on at Madison Square Garden. I don't know if they mentioned Madison Square Garden, but I'm going to guess that's what that is. He sees that there's some exhibition, and it's Captain America's doing a charity thing where if you can last a few minutes with him, it'll help raise money for charity. So this guy's wants to help, innocently he wants to go in there and, yeah, I'll fight you, Cap. Daredevil just, crashes the place and starts fighting Cap. Almost for no reason, just because he's all upset with the radiation poisoning he had. So they fight. It's real gratuitous. It's always fun to see the two superheroes fighting one another. I mean, Gene Cole, look at the action on this stuff. Talk about WrestleMania, man. But of course, he comes to his senses and he takes off. And Cap's understanding. I don't know why he did this, but I'm sure he had his reasons. So that was it. Back in the day when you're doing monthly comics, you just got to crank out a story like on the spot, basically. So here's a great one, Hulk versus Thor, pencils by Jack Kirby. I mean, man, if there's ever a guy made for Treasury size comics, it's Kirby. All that power and action. Here's one of my other favorites. My other favorite one besides the Cap and Daredevil in this book was Silver Surfer and Spider-Man. So this is from the Silver Surfer comic from the late 60s, maybe even 70 maybe. But again, these two great characters, great art by John Buscema. Again, another one of the Pantheon Titans of Marvel Comics in the Silver Age and Bronze Age. But so anyway, it was a great way. These are kind of fun, right? You get these little character illustrations in each chapter. But it's a great way for a young kid like me at the time, as I'm buying the new comics off the rack, to you know, splurge $1 or $2. Right? The Marvel, this one's $150, but I was looking at the various books. It's because it's like 80 pages. But then I noticed the ones that are like the DC ones here, 60 pages, 64 pages, they're $1. So anyway, so you know, sometimes if I have a couple of bucks, I would have to think about getting one of these because that's a whole $1. Whereas before I could have bought. Back at the time, I guess the books were either 25 cents or I guess by 1977 they were 30 cents. So you could either get 8 comics or maybe 7, whatever, for $2 or 4 comics in one of these. Anyway, you had to figure out how to spend your money back then because, you know, you're at the mercy of mom and dad's allowance. So these are great comics, you know. Some, you know, I get to learn about DC at the time, and DC's an older company, at least with, you know, their classic characters. So the stories they reprinted were these great, really awesome Golden Age comics. I think this is from like 1951. So the origin of the Joker, the man behind the red hood. So, you know, if you've seen the Tim Burton movie, you kind of remember the Joker falling in the vat of chemicals. But these are really fun to read. I mean, literally read it because Batman is very much a detective in these old stories, at least in this one, where he's actually looking at, it's a hair analysis and, you know, fingerprints, and he's talking about clues and all this stuff. So I really got a sense of Batman back then as a criminologist, you know, as he's been known to be identified as. So anyway, reading like Lex Luthor's origin, and you get this cool 2-page pinup of the DC supervillains. They used to have these, DC would do these a lot. So I don't think I ever cut mine up. I wouldn't cut up my comic. Actually, I did cut up comics, but I don't think I'd want to cut up the back cover, something so nice. But I guess it's a diorama where you cut out this white area, and then you cut out this background, and then you put it underneath here, and then you have the heroes. And you basically get this cover, I think, right? So, and there was a sequel. Some of these, so most of them I bought off the, like I said, off the rack at the local 7-Eleven or the grocery store, McCoy's Market and King Cole, I remember. If you're from my area here in Whittier, McCoy's Market, some of you might remember, but if not, it was on the corner of Washington and Norwalk, where the Food for Less is at right now. Right in that same spot was the old McCoy's Market. So it was a big supermarket, and then in the front of the market they had the liquor department, which is interesting because in the liquor department they had the magazine racks and the comic rack spinners. So I remember every time my mom would get in line to pay for groceries, because you know she could see me within eyesight, I'd walk over to the comics and magazines. But it was weird because it's in the liquor department, so I always felt weird walking in that area. But you know, I guess you're allowed to because they had comics there. So then I'd sometimes look at the big racks and maybe pick out one of the books here. And at one point, I think the only time I ever did it back then as a kid, I did order, I don't remember if it was like, you know, one of these I bought in the store, and the other two I think I ordered through mail order. And I'm pretty sure it was this one, because I just not seen it on the rack. So I wanted a copy of this Justice League. Like I said, DC called them limited collector's edition, but we call them all Treasury edition because they're all the same size. But again, it reprinted a lot of some Alex Toth new artwork, I think, on this little special features here. This is an interesting double page pinup of the JLA satellite, the space satellite, with pencils by Terry Austin, inks by Dick Giordano, which usually I've known Terry Austin mostly as an inker, particularly on John Byrne's X-Men run. Anyway, a lot of fun stuff in there. Here's something that'll trip out my friends. Like, they always, I've been asked for 45 years, not into Star Wars. I never got into the movies. I did buy the Marvel Comics 2-volume adaptation, right? Marvel Special Edition of Star Wars. Yeah, they did a comic adaptation. So this is a collection of the first 3 issues. I definitely read it as a kid. I guess while everybody was in the theater watching the movie, I read the comic and okay, I read it. I got the story. I'm cool. I don't know why I never got into Star Wars. But yeah, I did buy the comic off the rack. So this compiles the first. They originally let me show you here because make sure I get this right. Yeah, they did 3 issues of Star Wars. Actually, 6 total. 6 issues doing the first movie adaptation. So this book collects the first 3. This collects the second 3. So there you go. There's my one Star Wars collector's item in my vast collection of everything else I own. The biggest deal for me at the time was this gem. It's the Mighty Marvel DC Comics Battle of the Century, right? Well, it's the greatest superhero team up of all time, but at the same time, because it's good marketing, it's the Battle of the Century. 1976, Marvel and DC, for the first time ever, decided to put together this collaboration, Superman versus Spider-Man. Boy, I tell you, as a kid, there was nothing bigger for me than this. In fact, it was probably so big for me, I didn't care about Star Wars as a movie. Like, there was nothing better than this. This is a copy I bought years ago, right? Real nice copy. I don't remember what I paid, maybe not more than 20. I think they're pretty expensive now. But let's look through my dog-eared, well-worn, ripped to shreds copy of, the greatest team-up of all time. It's funny, I don't think you'll ever see something like this again. I don't know, now that it's Disney and Warner Brothers. I don't know if they'd want to ever do something together. Who knows? But yeah, this is great. You had Doc Ock and Lex Luthor were the villains of the piece, right? And of course, Stan Lee, the publisher of Marvel, and Carmine Infantino, the then publisher of DC. They each got to write a little intro. Boy, but the artist behind this, Ross Andrew, was he was doing Spider-Man at the time, Amazing Spider-Man. That's when I started buying it. And I guess he had done some DC work before. So I think he was a natural artist for this. But boy, does he take full advantage of these huge page spreads. Look at that robot walking through that building, walking through the city. I mean, it's fantastic. No wonder it's like, well read. And eventually, so it's a Superman versus Lex Luthor adventure. Second chapter is, we got introduced Spider-Man again. Look at this, is amazing to me. This is all drawn by hand with a ruler and a pencil, right? There's no, what do people use now? Google image search, whatever, or Google SketchUp. I don't know. All these things you could use on a computer to do this, but this is all hand done. That's amazing, the perspective on that. So there's a Spider-Man Doc Ock story, and then the villains meet in prison. This is cool, right? Doc Ock and Lex Luthor. And then eventually, they join forces, escape, and they concoct some plan. And here's where you start seeing, like, it's kind of the tease before you see the team up. There's Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and the other Daily Planet people. And then here you see the Daily Bugle people, J. Jonah Jameson, Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Robbie Robertson. So they all meet at this exhibit, and then all of a sudden there's an evil Superman that shows up, makes the 2 women disappear, and Spider-Man's on the trail. And then boom, right there, like, wow, they finally meet. And At the time, I was just focusing on this, right? This was historic. But over the years, especially now as an artist myself, boy, you really just appreciate and are, humbled by the work on that perspective, I think, man. That's great. So anyway, it's a great adventure. A big deal at the time. And of course, Marvel and DC don't let a good thing go to waste. Some years later, I think this is 1981, they did another team up, Batman versus the Hulk, which is interesting, right? Because you figure at the time, Superman was probably the most widely known character, with Batman, very close second. For Marvel, I guess it was Spider-Man #1, and I guess the Hulk, particularly because the Hulk had a TV show, right? The live action show on TV. I forgot the guy's name. Boy, Bill Bixby. I'm sorry. Sometimes my mind just disappears on me when I'm doing these videos. And there we go. There's a great team up, and I love this. Bronze Age Batman. That very particular blue. That very particular gray. That classic costume. It's like a whole different era. And of course, the artist on this one was a special treat. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, a fantastic DC, basically a DC artist. Ask anyone in comics, any fans familiar with the old Bronze Age stuff. Boy, he's a beloved illustrator of these characters, and so he was the right guy for this book. So again, very much like the TV show where Bruce Banner's getting jobs at laboratories trying to get, a way to figure out a cure for his Hulk problem. So here he's working at some Wayne Enterprises subsidiary. So that's a great way to set it up. And then the Joker shows up, and then Batman shows up, and it's like, wow, here we go, right? All the characters. And of course, Batman is basically very well trained, but he's a human. Versus the Hulk, you figure how he's going to get out of it. He's using his gadgets, some gas, and his, some smarts. Kick him in the gut where he's got to suck in the, Hulk's got to suck in the knockout gas. And then the Hulk villain is the Shaper of Worlds. Really interesting character. So yeah, this is, again, it was so fun to read this, right? Out of your regular monthly haul. It's like how often you see DC versus Marvel back then. I know in the 90s they did a whole series of team-ups where they actually combined characters, like a character called Darkclaw, which combined Wolverine and Batman. So they were all one-shots. That was a pretty interesting run of books, but these were like the big historic thing, right? Like I said, for us back in the day. Over the years, other people have done, this size. This may not fit in the camera, but this is a little bigger than, definitely it's bigger than 10 by 13, right? It's about the same height, but it's a little wider. These are done by an independent artist, Jeff Grogan. Jeff Grogan. 2008, Lookout Monsters, and Fan Dancer, 2010. I just saw these online, wrote the guy, ordered them. Really interesting work. I mean, different type of art, different type of, production values, and different type of storytelling. This Fan Dancer has a lot of, this is really interesting, multimedia, right? He's doing like collage, kind of reminds me of the old Jack Kirby photo collages, but you'd use, I guess he's Photoshop now maybe, but taking the pictures, old stills or movie stills, whatever, and then maybe some artwork from other comics, and then he'd do his own work in between. This is really interesting stuff. Definitely got his own art on some of this stuff. Anyway, and then Image Comics did one in 2014, Image Treasury Edition. So that one is pretty much, I think, the same size as a Treasury Comic. 10 by 13. Who put it together? Eric Larson and Bruce Timm. And they had a pretty good lineup of artists, right? Bruce Timm, Adam Warren, Tom Scioli, Ryan Otley, Eric Larson, Andy Kuhn, and Art Adams. And they were just, look at that 2-page spread. That's crazy. Eric Larson's story. Love that. So this is, you know, over the years, other people, publishers and artists have taken their stab at doing Treasury size comics, and people still do it. This one I actually bought recently. Silver Surfer Black. So it's a Treasury comic, but check it out. It's a little thinner. So it's basically the same proportions as a regular monthly comic. Trying to find it, Howard the Duck. It's the same proportion because this was published in this format. And it's just, you know, enlarged, but the proportion is still the same as the regular comic it was published at. But I bought it for, not just because it was a Treasury comic, but really because the art is amazing. I haven't read any Silver Surfer in years and years, but this artist, Tradd Moore, and of course the coloring by Dave Stewart. Couldn't even imagine getting these pages. And then, okay, let me start coloring these. But yeah, I've been reading it. It's a fun read, but really it's an astounding level of work on the art. And it's definitely worthy of this large format comic book. Look at that. Like I said, imagine coloring this stuff. Wow. So there we go. So yeah, these Treasury comics, big part of my youth, for a lot of us actually. And like I showed you on another video. So yeah, here we go. This is one of my comics. I did a 2017 Saints and Sinners. So it's not full Treasury size. This is a 9x12. So it's an inch short on each side. But the comic, the printing company I use for my comics, they did offer, the largest size they offered was 9x12. So I wanted to do a collection of these stories. These are all separate stories that I published previously. But I had wanted to do, you know, my own Treasury size, or at least in this case, as close as I could get using this particular publisher. You know, you can go to any printing company, and I'm sure they could, yeah, they can print any size. But because I had a relationship with this printer, they've printed a lot of my other books. You know, I know their system, I know their specs and everything. So I just, okay, let's go with the 9x12. So I ended up, this is one of 60. Yeah, I always keep the number 1 when I do a signed and numbered run. But what I did, like I said, I collected these 4 were short stories I did, and I wanted to collect them together. So I did a new character where she introduces each story. It's kind of like a horror host, like those old Charlton comics where they'd have like a, you know, either a witch or a ghost or some ghoul or something to introduce each story. So that's her role. And these are all kind of like religious themed characters, right? The maniac priest, God's son, demoniac, and the wandering Jew and Catholic boy. Those are really interesting, fun characters to work with. So I made up a new character, Angelica, or if you speak Spanish, you'd pronounce it Angelica, angelic. So this is new art with her, new character, and she's introducing the various stories. So then we cut to the, this is the reprint. And this, like I said, I did a lot of short one-page stories, which I'll talk about those one day. So 1 page of God's Son, and then this is a 4-pager with these characters called the Super 75ers. Yes, it takes place in 1975. And one of the characters in here, he's a priest who, during some exorcism, he gets like possessed by both an angel and a demon. So he's called demoniac. I wouldn't say he's good and evil, but he's got this bad side he's always trying to control. But he's definitely a, you know, tortured hero. And then again, more of the Angelica introduction. And then she introduces the Maniac Priest short story. I'll have to talk about that book one day. This is a neat collection of Maniac Priest stories, that particular book. And for this book, I decided just to put in a 2-page story. And then the 1 page, my infamous wandering Jew and Catholic boy. And what can I say about them, right? The names just came to me. It's like, wow, I just love how that sounds. And I had this idea of this, it was kind of like an exorcist duo, this rabbi and altar boy, and they have these superhero identities. And then, you know, a little wrap up here. And then I have behind the scenes material here talking about the origin of each of the characters, some sketches, some promo art I did of each of the characters for their appearances. And there's a demoniac from the Super 75ers, Maniac Priest, and I did a special little artwork pinup for this book. So, you know, like I said, a lot of times you grow up enjoying something, you know, loving something, a format or a particular style of comic, excuse me. Then you grow up making your own comics, you do different formats yourself, and then if you have a chance to maybe do something in the vein of one of these old things, you do it. So that's what Saints and Sinners is all about. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look back at these really, really amazing comics from back in the day. And if you like this video, or you think you know people who might be interested in checking out this particular content, the Giant Treasury Comics, let them know, share it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, Los Comics TV. I appreciate that. And thanks for watching. So enjoy. Bye-bye.